Howdy. Welcome to Dreamland. This is your host today, Jim Mars. And today we have a very special guest. We're going to be speaking with Alex Jones, that master blaster of truth, from his headquarters down in Austin, Texas. It's always nice to know that everyone out of Texas is not a dim bulb. Alex, thank you so much for being with us today.
Jim, it is great being here with you. It's a real honor, and let me tell you, I just read your new book, Rise of the Fourth Reich. It is amazing, and so I'm honored to be with you as well.
Well, thank you very much. And I want you to know you're preaching to the choir today, because most of the people here on Dreamland are pretty much up to speed with things that are going on. So before we get into the New World Order and your new DVD, Endgame, I'd like to just fall back a little bit and talk about something that I'm sure you don't usually talk about, and that's yourself. Tell us a little bit about Alex Jones. Where did he come from, and what are his hopes and ambitions?
Well, I don't know how detailed you want me to get, Jim, so cut me off.
Just hit the surface.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and in the town I lived in outside Dallas, I witnessed the sheriff deal the drugs and then bust the kids for using them. And then later he went to prison for that, so that kind of woke me up to government-sponsored narcotics trafficking. And then for my last few years of high school, we moved down to Austin, Texas, and I went to school here locally for college and RTF. And I, very early on, saw George Bush Sr., the first President Bush, calling for a New World Order. And I thought, that's interesting. What does that mean? So I looked it up. I'd always been into history, and I had thought, didn't I read about Hitler calling for a New World Order? And so I very quickly found out that was a call for world government, and that the British, over 100 years ago, had also called for a New World Order, but that would have been an Anglo-American New World Order based out of England, not Germany. And I thought, man, that's really strange that he talked about that. And then my professors, didn't matter if it was psychology or anthropology or mathematics, they would tell me there were too many people and we got to get rid of the population, and the New World Order is a great thing. It's a wonderful thing. World government is what we need to save us, and the family is bad. But then I would turn on CNN, and they would say, kook crazies believe in a New World Order. These crazy people believe in an imaginary New World Order. And I went, wait a minute, the president's calling for it, and other world leaders are calling for it, and I'm reading about it in all these textbooks, and they're telling me how great it is. But then we're also being told that none of this exists. And so that is how my awakening began. I, of course, had worked in the summers on a ranch as a cowboy on our family property, and I had always been a big, supporter of the Second Amendment. So when I first got involved in kind of parapolitics or looking under the surface, I was more of a kind of a mainline Republican/libertarian. But then very soon I found out about the private Federal Reserve and a lot of other, big, serious power brokers in the world system. And, of course, Waco had just happened around the time I was waking up, so I watched the C-SPAN hearings where they were admitting that they'd sent Delta Force in. And so I actually sent off to the Congress to get the full record and got some of the files that had brought into evidence that had mentioned Delta Force going in and killing the Davidians. And sure enough, there it was in my hand. And I would be watching the news saying, oh, no one was firing. The FLIR footage didn't pick up gunfire. That's not gunfire. And the media was acting like it was a big mystery, and they didn't know if it was true or not, when I had the congressional record where the Delta Force admitted that they had been involved in this. And I knew that the Army killing citizens, even if they were weird, I didn't agree with the Davidians, was very, very dangerous from my basic study, just general study of history. And so in college, in the mid-1990s, I said, I better get involved in radio. And I found out very soon that all they wanted was either liberal or conservative in talk radio, and that I wasn't going to fit in. So I went down in 1995 and got an Access TV show, and it got very popular within a year. And then I started a local radio show. They called me and said, you'd be good on a Saturday night. It got some good ratings. They gave me a weekday show, and I got syndicated. A small syndicator, only on about 10 stations in 1998. And today I'm on about 70 stations and have some of the biggest alternative news websites out there, Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. And we're basically the tip of the spear in the fight against the New World Order. And because we don't get into the whole left-right paradigm, The left listens to us, the right listens to us, and everything we talked about, everything that we discussed with all the great guests we've interviewed and talked to in the films I've made with people like Jim Mars and so many others, the things that George Norrie talked about, the things that Whitley Strieber talked about, all of these people, their credibility has just risen and risen and risen as all of this bizarre stuff comes out with shadow government news and concentration camp news in the Houston Chronicle and the San Francisco Chronicle and astronauts saying that there's secret government operations going on. And it's like the dam is breaking and all of our credibility has just shot through the roof.
Well, that's exactly right, Alex. Don't you feel sometimes that we're in a foot race heading for some collision point, and it's either going to turn into a 1984 Orwellian tyrannical dictatorship, or we're going to see a new birth of individual freedom and liberty?
Well, that's it, and that's the choice. People every day call me and email me and say, you're right about the New World Order, but you need to do this, you need to do that, and I just say to them, look, it takes every hour in the day I've got just to speak out and warn people and just to research and study and be aware of the different things that are going on and happening. If you want to be the change you want to see in the world, if you want goodness to prevail, stop counting on some champion to do it for you. You are going to have to look in the mirror, and you're going to have to change your community at the local level, and that is starting to happen. But the biggest thing is the apathy. People are awake, but they still are somewhat apathetic.
Well, what do you ascribe that apathy? Do you think people are just kind of naturally apathetic and I don't want to get involved? Or could it be that they're being drugged down with chemicals spraying in the air and chemicals in the food and chemicals in the drugs? What do you think?
Well, there's no doubt, and that's when Endgame, my new documentary film that's available at Infowars.com. By the way, it's also free on Google Video. I leave it up there. I could take it down. It cost me $150,000 to make it, which is a lot for me. But I didn't go out and buy a boat with that money. I went and made a film and put it out for free because I know.
By the way, folks, I heartily endorse getting a copy. Buy a copy. Help support Alex Jones. Buy a copy of Endgame. And over and above his confrontation with the Bilderbergers in Canada, which is almost worth the price of admission right there, it is an excellent, and very graphic overview of the rise of the New World Order, and it has a history. It's got some background that everybody needs to know. I'm sorry, Alex, I just had to put in a plug for Endgame. I just thought you did a great job with that.
Well, thank you, but and sure, if folks want the high-quality DVD, which they're authorized to make copies of for nonprofit educational purposes, they can go to Infowars.com. But look, we're so late in the game. It's free on Google Video, and there's a full bibliography, by the way. There is a full online bibliography at whatistheendgame.com or endgamethemovie.com. Both URLs will take you there, where every millisecond of the film, every document, every video clip, every claim we make, when we say the U.S. government radiated 100,000+ Jewish children, paid Israel to do it, we give you links to Haaretz, we give you links to Jerusalem Post, we give you links to the documentary films that air on Israeli TV. When we say the U.S. government radiated 4,000 American children to death, foster children, we give you links to the federal government agencies and their Atomic Testing Bureau, which admits all of this. When we report that all of England has repeatedly been sprayed with chemical, biological, and radiological weapons, and that the bubonic plague has been released into Scotland, we give you the BBC, Associated Press, Reuters. It's all there. Truth is so much crazier than any fiction that you could ever imagine. It is just so mind-blowing, and it is a fact that they are. I've seen the studies where they find Prozac and Ritalin and other drugs in the water. They find them in water supplies that aren't feeding out of cities that shouldn't have these drugs in it from people's sewage. They're putting it in the water, and they are drugging the population. And listen, 15 years ago when I first woke up to the New World Order, I was still naive, and I thought, everybody's kooks that talks about all this other radical stuff. I didn't believe that sodium fluoride was bad for you. My dad's a dentist. He didn't believe it because it's compartmentalized. But then I saw the thousands of studies, thousands of documents, the Nobel Prize-winning scientists, and then I found all the government documents where they did put it in the water in Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia, and the U.S. government did decide to pacify the U.S. because it is a toxic sedative that increases cancer, bone fractures. Just Google fluoride increases cancer. You'll get hundreds of mainstream news articles, massive bone cancers. It attacks every gland in the body. It attacks every organ. It's what the main cause now, one of the main causes of the arterial sclerosis with these huge plaques isn't even the fat we're eating. That adds to it. But the first buildup, your arteries and veins are supposed to be rubbery and healthy and shining, and then all the other fat and things just shoot through and doesn't stick. But fluoride sticks and builds plaques and combines with the natural calciums and things that are in the water when you drink it, and then it creates these literal stone plaques like you see on your faucet inside your arteries. And I have all the studies on that. And that's just one area. I remember 10 years ago reading Swiss and Dutch and German and Chinese and British and Australian internal reports by the cell phone companies and the companies making the hardware for the towers back in the 60s when they were first developing it, and the 70s before it became popular, where they admitted that the towers are radiating people within a few hundred feet. It's deadly. With all the experiments they did, with the fact that if you use a cell phone more than an hour a day, it is going to give you a brain tumor. And then now all the numbers are off the charts, and they admit, I mean, it's just, you start trying to cover the end game, and you realize it's all institutionalized and done by design, but less than 1% of the population knows what's going on. The average cops, the average scientists, the average dentist and doctors and nurses, they don't know. They are given the false reasons for all of this, and when you pull back and see the full picture and you read the official United Nations Biological Diversity Assessment from 1995 and 1987, where they say, and this is in my film Road to Tyranny, we also cover it in Endgame, but in the film I made 7 years ago, the official documents, I mean, I went to the library, to the UT library. Then I sent off to the UN when I got these documents, and it said they're going to build, this is official UN policy, a world government to carry out the forced extermination of at least 80%. And then we hear about Dr. Peter Singer and Dr. Eric Pianka and all these big top professors who give speeches saying, kill 90% of the population. This was all over the news last year, and the news reported, and I talked to people that were there, that Eric Pianka from the University of Texas, this is just right around me, projected in his PowerPoint a huge screen of human skulls with a red background over it, with a red filter, and he said 90% need to die, and I'm ready for my family to go first. He was given a 95% by the Texas Academy of Sciences, and he gets these standing ovations everywhere, with people with tears running down their faces, in vitriol, with 3 and 4 minute standing ovations, shouting. And then I had his graduate students, who I would Google their name, because they were posting these on their own scientific, personal websites, and these were his graduate students who are now working in bioweapons labs. One girl, it totally horrified me. They sent me their graduate papers like it was proof that they were right, saying, he's not a radical. Many of us believe all humans need to be killed. And so the main line of scientific thought now is to kill 90% of us. So it's conservative to only want to kill 80. 90 is the main line, and there is a large minority who want total human extinction. And they have this new book out about the planet without us, and the guy's a big rock star on TV and stuff, talking about how great it'll be when we're all gone. But that's the globalists just training us to not have our life force instinct, training us to believe that humans are bad. Richard N. Haas, former director of the Club of Rome, now current head of the Council on Foreign Relations, in 1992 put out a public Club of Rome paper, reissued last year by the Council on Foreign Relations, where he says we will use two prongs, two main attacks in a pincer attack. We will use terror as a way to take people's rights, and we will use phony environmentalism as a way to make humans the enemy so the state can wage war against humans. Meanwhile, all the real environmental crises destroying our society aren't going to be reversed, aren't going to be stopped. The cross-species clones, the half-pig, half-human creatures that are all over the news, the spider goats, the chimeras, all of this island of Dr. Moreau nightmares that give rise to superviruses and bacteria that are already decimating, and the chopping down of rainforests and the overfishing, all of this real stuff's being ignored. And they say we're going to give them a fake carbon tax, which actually makes plants grow. It's what plants breathe. Taxing carbon as a toxic waste, carbon dioxide. We're all going to have a world ID card starting set up in England and Canada where you swipe it, and when your carbon credits run out, you start getting fined and feed. And now they have set up in England climate cops where all the kids in the country, they're trying to recruit them, and they wear red and black uniforms. This is more Nazi than the Nazis. Go to Infowars.com. Type into Google climate cops. It's mainstream, and they're saying, yes, it says smack your parents. It says whack. Folks, you can't believe this. It says, in fact, I can pull the article up. They say in there, report on them. Keep dossiers on your parents. I mean, it's all happening. I know I'm ranting, ladies and gentlemen, because to know this, and to know it's coming down on us, and to know that truth is so bizarre, and to know that the general population is starting to listen, but they only know something's wrong. They have no idea. I mean, even myself, studying this intensely, I'm 5 times more radical, 10 times more radical than I was a decade ago, only because I know more. I mean, I was a skeptic. I couldn't believe how crazy it is. And now I wonder, what else don't I know? What else am I going to find out? What else are they going to admit?
Well, we're going to have to take a break right now, but we'll be right back with our special guest for today, Alex Jones.
If you're a subscriber to UnknownCountry.com, don't miss the chat with Jim Marrs Saturday morning. That is Saturday, September the 6th from 10 to 11 a.m. Pacific time in the UnknownCountry.com subscriber section live chat room. Ask him the questions that this show is bringing up in your mind.
You're listening to Whitley Strieber's Dreamland Online with guest host Jim Marrs.
Okay, we're back today with Alex Jones. You are on Dreamland, and let's get right back into it. Let's go back to their basic premise, which you have very well articulated, which is, and you know, this goes way back. I have an interview with General Maxwell Taylor, who was our last ambassador to Vietnam and a big Council on Foreign Relations guy. And this was an interview done about 1972. And I think he accurately reflected the thinking of his CFR buddies when he said, by the beginning of the next century, well, that's now, he said, we have to reduce the population of the world. And he said, we'll do this by 3 means. We'll do this through limited regional conflicts. Well, we've got Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan.
We'll do
and
it through food.
Iran. And he said, we're going to do it by disease. You've got AIDS and Ebola that is decimating Africa, and by starvation. And we've got, at a time when the technology exists on this planet to feed every single person, there are people literally starving to death while we're sitting here talking on the radio. It's amazing, and so that is their plan.
Well, as you know, let's give them more documentation.
Yeah.
State Department Memorandum 200, Henry Kissinger tells the Third World in 1973, declassified in 92. Just Google it, folks. It'll be on the Library of Congress website, National Security Archives as well, saying you have to reduce your population by half if you want any IMF or World Bank money. And in India, they just drove around grabbing women off the street and sterilizing them.
Exactly. Now, I propose that this is all based on the premise that there is an overpopulation problem, and if that's true, then the logical, rational thing to do is to decrease the population. But I maintain I don't think we have an overpopulation problem. I think we have a population density problem.
Exactly, and we have a dirty technology problem, but it gets worse than that. And again, folks, Jim Marrs knows more than I do about these subjects, so I kind of feel bad here pontificating, but for the audience that may not, let me tell you the most dastardly part of all of this. What have I told you that I have proof that the elite in 1948, 1949, made the decision to actually put in policies that would make the third world overpopulate. Now, let me break that down. They called it a people bomb. The Royal Commission on Population, that the State Department Memorandum 200, official U.S. government policy, 20-something years later, is only a regurgitation of. The Royal Commission on Population, 1944 to 1949, commissioned by His Royal Highness of England, states that the world is overpopulated, and if we went in and gave them clean industrial systems, they'd stop deforestation, they wouldn't be overdense, we could educate them, but then they would become industrialized threats, and through neo-mercantilism, we can't allow them to have their own industries, their own wealth-producing systems. We have to have them interdependent. We can only let them produce raw materials, and that will keep them on the agrarian economy of having 5, 6, 7 children who you need to work the fields, especially because a couple of them usually die when they're young, when they're babies. And so they said this will hold them back and choke up the third world, and then we can just deal later with them. We've got to stall them from becoming industrialized for 30 or 40 years, and then we can, through sterilization and other programs, AIDS, they don't mention that there. They just say sterilization and war and famine, as you said. Later we can then mass cull them, but right now, to keep them from industrializing, we've got to go in with these fake aid packages that specify where the money can be spent to keep them where they're at. So we really have 6.5 billion people right now, and obviously I agree we're not overpopulated. We can have floating ocean cities very cheaply right off the coast that are wonderlands. We can have just all sorts of, the technologies, we can build higher. We can have sustainable communities. And see, they piggyback on all those reasonable sounding things, but they used overpopulation as a weapon against those third world nations. Yes.
Alex, I don't know if you've looked into this, but I heard this some time back, and I thought, oh, that can't be right. But then I looked, and it is. The entire 7 billion population of the world could actually live quite comfortably just in the state of Texas.
Yes.
So, see, folks, it's not truly an overpopulation problem. It's a population density and industrialization problem, as Alex just outlined. Well, Alex, we see what their plan is for third world. What do you see as the plan for us, the first world?
Well, let me just throw a caveat in and then answer that question. They're engaged in all this genetic engineering that butchers the very genetic code of the planet, that irrevocably vandalizes it. Meanwhile, they're using depleted uranium at military bases all over the world, and in Serbia and Iraq and Afghanistan with many, many billions of years half-life, totally deadly. So again, they don't care about the environment. They get us to go along with their anti-human agenda in the name of that, knowing we're reasonable and do care about the environment. Now, you say, what is in store for England, the United States, Europe, Japan? The destruction of the family, forced drugging of the water supplies, a THX 1138. You see that movie. That movie was based loosely upon Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Huxley's brother was a top eugenicist. The Huxleys were married into all the major eugenics families, the Darwins and others. And so they wanted to basically play God. And if you look at what he said in that 1933 book, Brave New World was published in 33. That's how smart these people were, about subclasses, drugged out classes to be controlled, everything you then read in official government documents that they've been doing. This was the plan for it. His brother Julian Huxley ran UNESCO, the United Nations Educational and Cultural Organization, and they tell you what they're planning right there, and it is a THX 1138. That was George Lucas's first film. That is what
was in that.
Robert Duvall, it's excellent. That is exactly, you watch that, that is what they plan to do. That is no mere trifle of fantasy. That is what they want to build, and that is what they're doing.
Well, I'm sure you're aware of the late movie producer director Aaron Russo and what he quoted Nicholas Rockefeller saying when he asked him, "What is your end game, Mr. Rockefeller?" And he said, "To microchip the population and have the bankers run the world." That pretty well says it, doesn't it, Alex?
Exactly. And then The elite are microchipped, and then they're told to be left alone. The police leave them alone. It's the ultimate class society, and the population is tax controlled, regulated. Already, the Pentagon, more than 2 decades ago, this has been an MIT magazine, it's all admitted now, came up with a grid plan for occupied nations, and they said we're going to test it out in England and the United States. Millions of cameras in each country, sometimes millions of cameras per city. London has 4.5 million, almost one for every person in the city. Face scanning cameras, biometric cameras, cameras that track your walk, cameras that read your license plate and tax you. Total control everywhere, but then the elite will be exempted from all that. And then what did we see in the news a couple of months ago? But in California and other states, in California, the San Jose Mercury Bee, as well as the it was the San Jose Mercury News and the Sacramento Bee. I combined those two papers. I knew I made a mistake there. They both reported that 994,000 individuals in California, of its 28 million or 30 million, whatever it is now, they are exempt from paying tolls. They are exempt from being pulled over. They are exempt from DWI because they have license plates that the police cannot run and are not in the computer, and they're cops, judges, prosecutors, state workers. They're expanding it by hundreds of thousands a year, and they are above the law. So there is that very system where they are above the law and we are scum.
Well, we're going to have to take a break right now, but we'll be right back with our special guest for today, Alex Jones. Okay, we're back today with Alex Jones. This is Jim Mars. You are on Dreamland, and let's get right back into it. Alex, tell me this. What do we do about all this?
Well, we go to our city councils and we say, we know the feds came in with grants and put in all these face scanning cameras, remove them. We know that in Austin, Texas, they put cameras and microphones up all over the city in 98. We go and we have them removed. We take control of our cities. We educate enough people to do it. We go in and we remove these electronic voting machines, which we know are stealing elections. We do that by grand juries, by lawsuits, by indictments. We fight. We educate the public.
In other words, get active.
We are coming up to that, exactly, to that critical mass point right now where the public, Congress has the lowest approval rating in history, a 9%. Both parties, they can't fool us with the dog and pony show, the WWF wrestling of tag teaming us with two guys on the same team. People know that our presidential elections and most our congressional elections are as phony as a Don King boxing match, where both fighters are owned by his boxing company. And it's the same thing. We have to fully discredit the system, show that it loses all credibility and basically collapses. Right now, a collapse, which they're engineering against us, is the best thing against them. A collapse in their confidence, a collapse in the people going along with them. If not, mainstream news report the FEMA camps are built. They're training the secret police right now. The youth corps, all of it's happening. If we don't fully learn to distrust and dislike the government, like our founding fathers told us to do and like history shows, we're in deep trouble.
Amen. That's exactly right. In fact, I don't know if you know about this one, Alex, but in England today, which seems to be the proving ground for techniques and procedures and...
You're right. It's the beta testing facility.
Methods, that they then bring over here. They have the Fixated Threat Assessment Center, which is a team within the Metropolitan Police made up of a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and the police, and they use computer profiling to find out who might possibly be going to be a threat
against a
very important person, and they have the power to go out and arrest them and hold them. And when you ask them how many people have you arrested for, merely because you think they might be going to commit a crime, and they say, well, we can't tell you because that they withhold that information under the rubric of patient confidentiality.
Yeah, that's totally Kafkaesque. For those that haven't read that novel written almost 100 years ago, the precursor to We in 1984 and all of them, he is indicted, tried, and executed and never even told what the crime is. And so now they have this behavioral thing where they give these TSA workers at the airport a 1-week course, and then they supposedly can then read your mind, and then they come and detain you going through airport screening. If you look nervous or look upset or look unhappy, your mom may have died or your dad may be sick or you may have an ulcer. God knows what it is, heaven knows. And then they go ahead and pick you up. And then I've been in England politely, it's in my film Terror Storm, interviewing people. And I had police walk over and say, we're putting you in a terrorist database. Who are you? You're not allowed to have cameras on the streets of London. Meanwhile, there were like 20 cameras on that block aiming at us. And I said, is this a joke? Now they've banned protests in most areas of England. And Steve Watson, the guy that runs PrisonPlanet.com for me, this is an upstanding guy. He has a master's degree in political science, very clean cut. He was taking his girlfriend out to dinner a few weeks ago. And the secret police just ran up and were randomly stopping people and searching them and asking them, are you a terrorist? And they said, we're going to go ahead and put you in a database. And they've put millions. They've done 8 million of these stops last year alone. So it isn't just, and now in England, they put up huge billboards.
In England?
Yes, in England.
Oh, in England. Okay.
Yes, Steve Watson works for me in England.
Here.
Well, it's happening some here, but in England, where Steve Watson works for me, running PrisonPlanet.com, that's run out of England, they're putting up huge billboards. These are online saying, Big Brother is watching. And it's the police saying, we're watching you, and Big Brother is good. So they're not just embracing Big Brother, they are fully saying it's good now.
Well, they're already doing this over here. I don't know if you saw the stories about the women who were stopped for a routine traffic stop in Plano, Texas, just north of Dallas, and then actually arrested and hauled away. And then myself, a few months ago, I was in Los Angeles, and we were driving down the street, and luckily we kind of curved off to the left, but I looked down the street to the right, and there were a bunch of flashing red lights that caught my attention, and there was some of these lighted signs, and it said, police checkpoint.
Oh, that's martial law. That is martial law. Martial law being implemented. I'm sent 3 or 4 YouTube videos a day from California and Texas and New York and Illinois and all over the country, but those are the main states, where they just in neighborhoods set up checkpoints, and if you turn around, they grab you. And then citizens come out of their front doors and start videotaping, and cops will see you 100 yards away on your own porch in a couple cases, and come over and threaten to arrest you and say, you can't videotape us in America, but they're going to put cameras on you. And yes, this is going on. But I mean, now they've got, here's the incredible one. Oh, my God. I start thinking about how bad it is, and it even shocks me.
They now have the neighborhood security program or something like that, where the mayor's already announced they're going to bring in police to selected neighborhoods, seal off all entrances and exits, and then people have to go through the police checkpoints to get in or out. And if you don't live in that area, and if you can't prove that you have some need to be in that area, they turn you away.
Yes.
Talk about a modern Warsaw ghetto.
Yes, listen, 2 weeks ago, the governor of Illinois announced, we're not just going to use National Guard to, quote, fight terror, when we know that's bogus, a rubric, an excuse, a red herring, a rationale. They said, we're now going to use the National Guard locking down neighborhoods in gun sweeps. So first they announced 3 months ago, we're going to have cops out in black uniforms for intimidation purposes. They said that, with M16s. Now we're going to use the National Guard. So now it isn't Katrina taking guns. Now it's now happening. They're beta testing. They're getting us trained. The military is coming for your guns.
So I guess posse comitatus is out the window.
Man, this is, like you said, this is Nazi Germany. We are on high right now. They started boiling the frog decades ago. They turned it up low, but now it's on a high flame. The water is boiling, and the frog's basically dead.
So what does the average guy do about this? If you're listening to this program and you're scratching your head and going, well, I'm just one person, what can I do? And believe me, Alex, I'm sure you've heard that a million times just like I have. What do you tell someone who says, I'm only one person, what can I do?
Well, I've gotten aggressive. And in cities, I'll tell you what people are doing. In cities where they're not AM and FM stations that carry the truth, like a show like this one, people are just putting up their own micros or pirates. People are starting websites. They're calling into talk shows. They're going to city council. They're putting flyers up all over their neighborhoods about martial law, to where the buzz is everywhere, so that the enemy, the criminal federal government that is destroying the United States, that's bipartisan, is basically discredited. So again, that's what you do You point out to people that historically this is classical tyranny, and this is aimed at the American people. It has nothing to do with security or keeping you safe. They know they're about to implode the economy. They know they're about to bring in some type of staged terror event or martial law. Listen to this. This is the type of stuff that falls in my lap every day. Up on Infowars.com right now. Exclusive. To provoke war, Cheney considered proposal to dress up Navy SEALs and Iranians and shoot them. And I have a link to a YouTube video from the Campus Progress Journalism Conference with Seymour Hersh, probably the most respected investigative journalist alive today. He dropped a bombshell last week at this event, and I just learned of it today. We've got a story up on it right now. It is unbelievable, and this is one of hundreds of examples, folks. We can't go over them all.
Well, I didn't see that on CNN.
I was about to say, Cy Hersh said the editors, and again, everything he's reported, he told us U.S. troops were in Iran 4 years ago staging attacks. He told us the torture was going on before it came out. He told us about the White House memo where they wanted to get U.S. aircraft flying low over Iraq to get them shot down to start the war. Cy Hersh has been 100%, but I'm actually mad at him. But I'm mad with one hand and then happy on the other because he did speak out, and he said, well, we didn't publish it because they didn't go ahead with the plan, but they had a whole cocktail, and I demand he release everything he's got from that White House source, because he's got sources, that they planned to put Navy SEALs in patrol boats. Right around the time they put out this fake announcement that Iranians were saying on the radio, we're going to blow your ship up in 2 minutes, trying to trick the missile cruisers to fire in the Strait of Hormuz off the coast of Iran on them. Turned out they said, oh, some prankster in English, because it turns out our own military got mad and said that was fake. Some prankster said that. No, it was the military, criminal elements of it. But now it's come out that Cheney proposed, but the military said no. There's video of this right now on Infowars.com. This is in front of 1,000 students or more at a major conference. Cy Hersh says to the world, my White House source tells me, but the New York Post wouldn't let me publish it, that Navy SEALs were going to dress up in Iranian uniforms and our shipyards were going to make the same blue jet boats, patrol boats, and that our Navy SEALs were going to come up and open fire on our ships, and that the ships were then going to fire back, and that they were then going to videotape this and say that Iran had attacked our ships. I mean, folks, 9/11's an inside job. Oklahoma City's an inside job. They use this to scare you into submission. We have them red-handed. If we don't expose this, then we have no one to blame but ourselves. And this is just incredible.
And that's absolutely true. And, of course, I can already hear somebody out there going, well, but wait a minute, if all that's true, wouldn't the FBI have told us about it? Well, folks, the FBI, it's a classic case of who will watch the watchers. If your local police become corrupt and criminal, then they can call in the FBI who can investigate. But what happens if the FBI becomes criminal and corrupt? Who watches them? Who sees over that? And the answer is nobody, except for the political hacks who are owned and controlled by corporate America.
Well, that's it. You've said it, my friend, and there's no other way to put it. And look, we told everybody.
At the local level, we have to start taking charge of our local communities, and we have to do like that sheriff did, I believe it was in Wyoming, wasn't it, Alex, where they said...
Threw the feds out.
Yeah, they said to the DEA, FBI, to the CIA, said, if you come in here and take actions that are in violation of the United States Constitution, you are no longer welcome in this county, and our deputies will escort you out. And, man, if every county in the United States would take that tack, we could restore some freedom in this country.
Well, you're right, and just for people out there who are in denial about all of this, it was never a conspiracy theory. It was never a rumor. People just hadn't gone to the source of it. It was in the San Diego Herald Tribune and other newspapers in 1964. Officers on those destroyers that were reportedly attacked by North Vietnam in the Gulf of Tonkin. Yes, in the Gulf of Tonkin. They went public and said, no one attacked us, we attacked them. Contrary to what we were told, that they came out into the Gulf and attacked our ships, they sent in special forces in PT boats to attack the coastline. The Vietnamese were smart enough to not fire back. And now it's been released. Now it's been declassified 3 years ago. We were all called conspiracy theorists. No, we knew how to pull up the San Diego Herald Tribune from 40 years ago. And they staged the whole deal, and 58,000 Americans died. The whole Gulf of Tonkin was staged, and now the LBJ McNamara tapes have been released by the LBJ Presidential Library Museum in Austin, Texas. But it gets worse. Operation Northwoods had been proposed to Eisenhower. He said no. Then it was proposed to Kennedy, who'd been gung-ho pro-war. He suddenly said, I'm going to tear up the CIA. He fired L.L. Lemonster, Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff. They wanted to hijack jets. This is ABC News, Baltimore Sun. They wanted to hijack jets, crash them, blow them up, bomb D.C., bomb Miami, shoot American citizens, and blame them on communists, and start a war with Cuba and the Soviet Union. Kennedy said no, and they killed him. But Johnson said yes and did Tonkin, and then did the USS Liberty in 1967, teamed up with Israel. That was under presidential control. The ship was under CIA. They parked our ship out there during the 7-Day War, tried to sink it for 2.5 hours. They couldn't sink it. And everybody said we made that up because I interviewed the admirals and the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Moore, and the people on the ship, and the doctor, and the captain before he died, McGonigal. And then now, a few months ago, Chicago Tribune, NSA released all the documents as exactly as we said, staged event, done. Exactly. Our own government attacked our own ship. And it gets a lot worse than that.
And believe me, this Operation Northwoods, I have copies of the actual documents. And what Alex said is not a conspiracy theory. This is exactly what they were trying to push in 1964, and I, for one, think they pulled off a more sophisticated version of that on 2001, because one of the plans under Operation Northwoods was to take a regularly scheduled commercial airliner and fix up a duplicate with the same numbers, and then remotely guide it as a drone and blow it up, and then blame it on Castro. And I think something similar to that happened on 9/11. But, Alex, we're about out of time here, and I think hopefully we've got everybody on edge and excited. And I think what we need to do now is just tell them it's time to get cool and collected and start paying attention to what's going on and take very positive steps on your own to get something done about this and start at the local level. Would you agree?
Well, absolutely. In the 4 minutes or so that we have left, I just want to say that I really appreciate this radio show having me on. I appreciate Dreamland and what they do. I've heard it on stations driving across the country and really found it to be very informative and very well done.
We're always kind of out front. Well, I got to ask you one final question before we leave. Has your voice always been gritty?
Well, I always had a deep voice, and then bullhorning at 100-plus events, screaming at politicians and demonstrations, and doing 4 hours of radio, now 4 hours of radio Monday through Friday and then 2 hours on Sunday. I always would hear old men that had these big, deep voices. I'm just wearing myself out at a early age.
It's taking a toll on you.
Well, I always had a deep voice, but no, I mean, and you know, years ago I had a few shots of whiskey and a few cigarettes, so I think that probably added to it as well. But yeah, I've always had a deep voice ever since I was about 14. It got a bit deep. People thought I was 20 when I was 14. But listen, in closing, I hope people will go to Infowars.com and get a copy of Endgame or Truth Rising or Terror Storm. And and if you can't afford the DVD at Infowars.com or by calling 888-253-3139, please go to PrisonPlanet.tv. Watch it in super high quality online right now at PrisonPlanet.tv.
All right, Alex Jones, one of the I guess we could say the spear point of the weapon for truth. Thank you so much for being with us today here on Dreamland. This is your host for today, Jim Mars, saying adios.
Now it's time to join Linda Moulton Howe, our Emmy Award-winning science reporter, for the facts about things that don't generally get talked about anywhere else, and that does not make them less important. To keep up with her work every day, go to earthfiles.com. Don't miss a single day of earthfiles.com. Today, Linda's talking about two different subjects. She's reporting on additional cat mutilations and some concerns that have been raised about your cell phone that you need to listen to. Here she is from Albuquerque, Linda Moulton Howe.
Thank you, Whitley. You cannot see it, taste it, or smell it, but it is one of the most pervasive environmental exposures in industrialized countries today. Electromagnetic radiation or electromagnetic fields are the terms that broadly describe exposures created by the vast array of wired and wireless technologies that have altered the landscape of our lives in countless beneficial ways. However, these technologies were designed to maximize energy efficiency and convenience, but not with biological effects on people in mind. Based on new studies, there is growing evidence among scientists and the public about possible health risks associated with these technologies. Those words are from an August 2007 report written by 14 scientists, public health, and public policy experts to document scientific evidence about electromagnetic fields and their impacts on biologies, including human brains and bodies. The scientists' bottom line is disturbing. Quote, "What is clear is that the existing public safety standards limiting these radiation levels in nearly every country of this world look to be thousands of times too lenient. Changes are needed," unquote. That means everyone is being exposed to too much electromagnetic radiation, and at the top of the list are microwaves from microwave cell towers and cell phones. A year after that bioinitiative report that I just quoted, only about 5 weeks ago, on July 23rd, 2008, that report so provoked Dr. Ronald Heberman, director of the University of Pittsburgh Cancer Institute, that he issued an unprecedented warning to his faculty and staff entitled, quote, "The Case for Precaution in the Use of Cell Phones." Dr. Heberman's memo begins, quote, "Electromagnetic fields generated by cell phones should be considered a potential human health risk." Dr. Heberman lists 10 precautions that include: do not allow children to use a cell phone except for emergencies. The reason is that growing organs in children are more sensitive to electromagnetic field exposure. And only use your cell phone to establish contact or for conversations lasting only a few minutes, as the biological effects are directly related to the duration of exposure. For longer conversations, use a landline with a corded phone, not a cordless phone, which uses electromagnetic emitting technology similar to that of cell phones. Those are direct quotes from his warning to his hospital staff. You can see Dr. Heberman's warning in its entirety at my news website, www.earthfiles.com, in this report, Growing Scientific Concern About Electromagnetic Pollution and Cell Phones. Now, electromagnetic pollution and its impact on human health has been the passionate concern of Libby Kelly, who received a master's degree in public health administration and is now managing secretariat for the International Commission on Electromagnetic Safety. She's based in Tucson, Arizona. The International Commission for Electromagnetic Safety is an international group of scientists and medical doctors who do peer-reviewed research on electrical and magnetic fields and electromagnetic radiation. Libby has worked to educate the public about the dangers of electromagnetic pollution since 1996. That was the year, only 12 years ago, that the Federal Trade Commissions Act was passed by Congress and signed by President Bill Clinton into law. Libby learned that a microwave antenna was going to be placed at her child's preschool, which was in a church. The telecom company agreed to pay the church $18,000 a year in exchange for using the church's cupola to place 4 microwave antennas. What astounded Libby Kelly is no one could answer her questions as a mother about what microwave radiation might do to her child and to the other children, and she found that the new Federal Communications Act specifically prohibited local governments from taking health concerns into account when approving microwave sites. Today, as of April 3rd, 2008, there are now 1,947,083 microwave towers and antennas in the United States. Also, by 2008, citizen groups are increasingly trying to prevent the addition of more microwave antennas by saying no to telecom companies when they want to pay to put antennas in churches, schools, or other public buildings. Los Angeles has even banned cell towers from school property. Here now is Libby Kelly.
Once people understand that if they can get on top of this quickly, the antenna proposal doesn't go through. For example, Julie Kornstein, who's a member of the LA City School District Board, got an ordinance through in 2000 through the LAUSD School Board banning cell towers on school property. Julie Kornstein is still concerned about this issue. And the fact that there's that ordinance in Los Angeles with city schools has gone all over the world and really inspired people. If you live in Los Angeles and you're driving to work and your kids are playing in school grounds and so forth, even if the antenna is not on the school property, the area where the school is located may have a number of antennas. And increasingly is getting harder to find all of them because the industry is forced to disguise them, which I prefer not to happen because I want to know where these are so I can avoid them. When the cell phone company comes a-calling to a church or a school, they typically look for a private school, and churches are very easy to work with because they usually need the money. But in Los Angeles, like everywhere else, the cell phone companies come in a stealth-like manner. They meet with the site owner. They offer them something, mutual benefit. They say, we'd be glad to help you with this roof and to help finance this or loan money for it or make you a good offer in terms of an annual fee. And they get a contract with the site owner. And so once the contract is signed, they kind of got them over a barrel because they've made a commitment. And there's a growing understanding that it's better to say no to these antennas because the science is becoming clearer all the time. The cell tower studies that have been published since 2003 are starting to be very well done and show a relationship to these health effects. And so if it happens that in the future these cell towers are really demonstrated to be causing harm, we may not be able to get them down. So it's better not to let them go up in the first place. It's just not worth it. There is a lot more networking going on in this country among citizens, among public health advocates, scientists, and medical doctors. I see the tipping point on this issue coming now. It's just I don't know how quickly we can move given the forces. This is a $1 trillion business globally, telecommunications.
And the telecommunications industry is trying to stop all citizen influence on restricting cell tower sites. On July 11th, 2008, the Cellular Telephone Industries Association, known as CTIA, petitioned the FCC to declare new limitations on local zoning authority as it affects cell tower siting. A public comment deadline was set by the FCC for September 15th, 2008. Specifically, CTIA requests the FCC to force municipalities to act on wireless antenna or tower zoning applications within 45 or 75 days. Rule that applications are automatically deemed granted if a local government misses the FCC's deadline, and would preempt any local ordinance that would automatically require a variance for cell tower applications. Essentially, the FCC is contemplating taking the tax-paying public out of the loop on any consideration for the placement of microwave towers.
That is exactly what is happening. How many towers do we need in this country or on the planet, you know? This industry intends to create a planetary network of antennas that are interoperable so we can all communicate. And our health is at stake. The planet's health is at stake. So I think we really do need to slow this down. And the scientists I work with are calling for the development of biologically based standards that take into account the science that shows what happens to living organisms, not just people, far below these existing standards set by the FCC and other nations of the world.
If there are thousands of microwave antennae now in the United States and all of the nations of the world, how do you put this genie back into the bottle?
That's the question that really people can't answer. Nobody wants to be a simple-minded Luddite and just say, turn it off, let's go back to a former time and pretend none of this really happened. Technology always works this way. You know, it happens, and then the questions about efficacy and safety and health and so forth always come later. We're so in love with innovation, you know, so we're all owning this now. I tell people that call me concerned about an antenna, if you're using a cellular phone, if you own cordless phones in your home and microwave ovens, you are a consumer and you're supporting this build-out. So people really need to take their own consumer behavior into account. I think the most reasonable thing to say to national governments to please call a halt to any more expansion, take a look at the science, come up with safe standards, and allow corridors or places in your countries for people that really can't tolerate this stuff, who are ill, because they won't survive very long if they have to live with this night and day. We've reached a point in most urban areas of the United States where we have an electrosmog condition, and people who have these immune problems like electrical hypersensitivity are leaving those places. They can't live there. They can't work there. Something has got to change.
If Earth Files and Dreamland listeners are concerned about losing your citizen rights to protest microwave tower sites, you should send a letter to the FCC by September 15th, 2008, requesting that they do not further preempt local zoning, stating that since 1996, municipalities have spent many hours creating legitimate bylaws unique to various cities, reflecting the will of citizens where they live, work, and create the community. Tell the FCC that the CTIA's request, which is to preempt, and that means to keep the citizen out of the loop now of granting okays for where microwave towers will go. Tell the FCC that the CTIA's requests do not reflect your view. And right now, at earthfiles.com, the address and all the information about this new proposal before the FCC and this hearing period for public comment as of September 15th, 2008, all that information is in my report at earthfiles.com. There is another environmental assault that I wish I never had to report about, but new cases are persistent. These are the bloodlessly mutilated cats, rabbits, dogs, horses, cows, and even koala bears around the world. I understand how disturbing these reports are, and today on Dreamland, I am not going to go into depth on any one case. Instead, I'm going to give an overview of how much animal mutilation activity has been reported in only June to August 2008. That's just the past 3 months. First, German rabbits. On Monday, June 9th, 2008, the owner of 2 rabbits in Witten, Dortmund of the Ruhr Valley in Germany found one of his pets gone and the other was headless. No blood. The wave of German rabbit mutilations began in October 2007, less than a year ago, increasing in May of 2008, and now at least 40 rabbits have been beheaded or cut up in odd ways without any signs of blood. The police task force spokesman told the UK independent newspaper, quote, "We have a number of officers working on the case and we are carrying out exhaustive investigations, but we have no idea who is doing this. We are still in the dark," unquote. From Germany across the northern hemisphere to Esterhazy, Saskatchewan, also in June 2008, a cow was found dead and bloodlessly mutilated, missing its ear, eye, tongue, jaw, flesh, genitals, and rectum was cored out. Not long after that one, and some miles away in Lloydminster, Saskatchewan, another cow was found dead and mutilated, both no signs of blood. By July 1st, 2008, a cat in Rutland, British Columbia, Canada, was found bloodlessly cut in half. It was one of a dozen mutilated cats found in Rutland since 2004. 3 days later, on July 4th, in northeastern Dallas, Texas, a cat was found, quote, "slit from neck to between its back legs, a very precise cut," unquote. All internal organs have been removed without blood. Back in Canada, in the first half of July, the fourth cat mutilation since 2006 was found in Kingston, Ontario, while in Palm Springs, California, the sixth mutilated cat was found there, prompting the Riverside County Sheriff's Office to declare the bloodlessly mutilated cats as, quote, "unusual and weird," unquote. On July 7th, a pet Chihuahua dog was found cut in half bloodlessly. And the next day, on July 8th, in Petersburg, Florida, a 10-year-old cat was found with a straight razor-sharp cut from its throat down without blood. The next day, on July 8th, in Corpus Christi, Texas, the third cat mutilation in a month was found, and it was cut precisely in half without blood. On August 21st, the Arizona Department of Agriculture investigated the unusual deaths of 40 head of cattle that all died grazing in the same pasture in Chino Valley. More than 150 other cattle in that pasture were unharmed. To date, the cause of the cattle deaths has not been reported. And finally, on August 22nd, at Clear Mountain, northwest of Brisbane, Australia, a 4-year-old koala bear male was found with its abdomen cut open bloodlessly. Earlier in August, a baby koala was also found dead and mutilated. That's rabbits, cows, cats, a dog, and koala bears, all unusual animal deaths since June 2008. This bloodless half-cat phenomenon was being reported about by even the New York Times as far back as August 13th, 1989, when 67 cats were found bloodlessly mutilated in Tustin, California. The august New York Times wrote, quote, "Some of the cats were cut in half with what some say is almost surgical precision. Others were disemboweled or skinned," unquote. Janet Hampson, a Tustin resident, summed up the eeriness of it all. Quote, "There is never any blood at the scene. The animals are often dismembered with surgical precision, and paws and other body parts are often left on the ground in strikingly similar arrangements. No one ever seems to hear anything, nor do dogs bark during what must be the killings. She and others in her neighborhood speculated that the cats were captured, taken elsewhere, their blood drained, and organs or heads or torso removed, and then the mutilated cat is replaced on its owner's lawn for reasons unknown." And beyond the New York Times, Whitley, as you and I and others have discussed for a very long time, the link between a non-human presence on this planet and the unusual deaths of animals large and small in the northern and the southern hemisphere has long been linked directly to the presence of extraterrestrial biological entities, as stated by Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso in his own book, The Day After Roswell, based on his work in the Pentagon from the end of the 1950s to the early 1960s.
And yet, it seems like a form of madness. Unfortunately, it's somebody from another world who's mad as a hatter.
Or this is their food.
But still, even if it's their food, what do you think?
Why do they leave them?
Why do they take it back? I
Yeah.
mean, that doesn't make sense. It's almost like it's a vindictive act. And something that's coming up on Dreamland soon is an interview with Frank Fascino, who's written a new book. He's a fine UFO researcher, and he's written a new book about the massive UFO wave in 1952, and he's identified the fact that 90 pilots lost their lives shooting these things, trying to shoot these things down, and a number of UFOs crashed during that period. And maybe it's vindictiveness. Maybe they're not like us. Maybe they don't forgive. Maybe they are still enraged over our initial reaction to their appearance.
Well, let me just give one other historic timeline piece of data. When I started working on A Strange Harvest in 1979, some of the people that I talked to were in England in the BBC and the ITN. And it was a producer in the BBC who had been interested in animal mutilations, and they had run down a journal. I believe the date on the journal was 1911, and it was about 104 sheep in one of the Australia billabongs being reported, all found in the same condition: ear missing, eye missing, tongue missing, jaw flesh, genitals, rectum cord out, no blood on any of 104 sheep. That is right at the beginning of the 20th century. If that is true, then whatever the phenomenon is, it has been interacting with animal life on the surface of this planet for a very long time, perhaps harvesting genetic material and using things as food. And sometimes I have wondered, as I wrote about in my first book, An Alien Harvest, could it be that the sacrifices that go back to the time of Crete and the Mayans, could they be related to the quote-unquote gods demanding sacrifices from the roly-poly humans, when in fact it was just another variation on animal mutilation?
Oh, boy. What a thought, Linda. That stopped me.
Well,
it's so ominous. My God. Okay. Well, we're going to have to call a halt today because we have come to the end of our time together. And I have to tell you, you never fail to shake me up. And congratulations on doing it again this time. Just before you go, what are you looking at just now, or dare I ask? For the futures, I mean. Is anything sort of in your mind?
For upcoming Dreamlands, we're definitely going to have a fascinating interview with Bob and Ryan Wood, I believe, for next week. And I'm also going to have a really quite amazing interview with Gerald Salenti. He is the writer and editor of the Trends Journal. And believe it or not, they have done something they've never done before, just completed at the end of August 2008. And it is like going into a time capsule or a time machine to 2012 and looking at what he is saying 2012 will be like socially, politically, spiritually, economically, based on what happened between 2008 and 2012.
Well, Linda, we could go on with that for hours, too. Thank you very much, Linda Moulton Howe, and don't ever miss a week of Dreamland. If you miss a week of Dreamland, you miss this information.
Local radio show, they called me and said, you'd be good on a Saturday night. It got some good ratings. They gave me a weekday show, and I got syndicated on a small syndicator, only on about 10 stations in 1998. And today I'm on about 70 stations and have some of the biggest alternative news websites out there, Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. And we're basically the tip of the spear in the fight against the New World Order. And because we don't get into the whole left-right paradigm, the left listens to us, the right listens to us, and everything we talked about, everything that we discussed with all the great guests we've interviewed and talked to in the films I've made with people like Jim Mars and so many others, the things that George Norrie talked about, the things that Whitley Strieber talked about, all of these people, their credibility has just risen and risen and risen as all of this bizarre stuff comes out with shadow government news and concentration camp news in the Houston Chronicle and the San Francisco Chronicle and astronauts saying that there's secret government operations going on, and it's like the dam is breaking, and all of our credibility has just shot through the roof.
Well, that's exactly right, Alex. Don't you feel sometimes that we're in a foot race heading for some collision point, and it's either going to turn into a 1984 Orwellian tyrannical dictatorship, or we're going to see a new birth of individual freedom and liberty?
Well, that's it, and that's the choice. People every day call me and email me and say, you're right about the New World Order, but you need to do this, you need to do that, and I just say to them, look, it takes every hour in the day I've got just to speak out and warn people and just to research and study and be aware of the different things that are going on and happening. If you want to be the change you want to see in the world, if you want goodness to prevail, stop counting on some champion to do it for you. You are going to have to look in the mirror, and you're going to have to change your community at the local level, and that is starting to happen. But the biggest thing is the apathy. People are awake, but they still are somewhat apathetic.
Well, what do you ascribe that apathy? Do you think people are just kind of naturally apathetic and I don't want to get involved? Or could it be that they're being drugged down with chemicals spraying in the air and chemicals in the food and chemicals in the drugs? What do you think?
Well, there's no doubt, and that's when Endgame, my new documentary film that's available at Infowars.com. By the way, it's also free on Google Video. I leave it up there. I could take it down. It cost me $150,000 to make it, which is a lot for me. But I didn't go out and buy a boat with that money. I went and made a film and put it out for free because I know.
By the way, folks, I heartily endorse getting a copy. Buy a copy. Help support Alex Jones. Buy a copy of Endgame. And over and above his confrontation
for the Second Amendment. So when I first got involved in kind of parapolitics or looking under the surface, I was more of a kind of a mainline Republican/libertarian, but then very soon I found out about the private Federal Reserve and a lot of other, big, serious power brokers in the world system. And, of course, Waco had just happened around the time I was waking up, so I watched the C-SPAN hearings where they were admitting that they'd sent Delta Force in. And so I actually sent off to the Congress to get the full record and got some of the files that had brought into evidence that had mentioned Delta Force going in and killing the Davidians, and sure enough, there it was in my hand. And I would be watching the news saying, oh, no one was firing. The FLIR footage didn't pick up gunfire. That's not gunfire. And the media was acting like it was a big mystery, and they didn't know if it was true or not, when I had the congressional record where the Delta Force admitted that they had been involved in this, and I knew that the Army killing citizens, even if they were weird, I didn't agree with the Davidians, was very, very dangerous from my basic study, just general study of history. And so in college, in the mid-1990s, I said, I better get involved in radio. And I found out very soon that all they wanted was either liberal or conservative in talk radio, and that I wasn't going to fit in. So I went down in 1995 and got an Access TV show, and it got very popular within a year. And then I started a high school. We moved down to Austin, Texas, and I went to school here locally for college and RTF. And I very early on saw George Bush Sr., the first President Bush, calling for a New World Order. And I thought, that's interesting. What does that mean? So I looked it up. I'd always been into history, and I had thought, didn't I read about Hitler calling for a New World Order? And so I very quickly found out that was a call for world government, and that the British, over 100 years ago, had also called for a New World Order. But that would have been an Anglo-American New World Order based out of England, not Germany. And I thought, man, that's really strange that he talked about that. And then my professors, didn't matter if it was psychology or anthropology or mathematics, they would tell me there were too many people and we got to get rid of the population, and the New World Order is a great thing. It's a wonderful thing. World government is what we need to save us, and the family is bad. But then I would turn on CNN, and they would say, kook crazies believe in a New World Order. These crazy people believe in an imaginary New World Order. And I went, wait a minute, the president's calling for it, and other world leaders are calling for it, and I'm reading about it in all these textbooks, and they're telling me how great it is. But then we're also being told that none of this exists. And so that is how my awakening began. I, of course, had worked in the summers on a ranch as a cowboy on our family property, and I had always been a big, support.
Howdy. Welcome to Dreamland. This is your host today, Jim Mars. And today we have a very special guest. We're going to be speaking with Alex Jones, that master blaster of truth, from his headquarters down in Austin, Texas. It's always nice to know that everyone out of Texas is not a dim bulb. Alex, thank you so much for being with us today.
Jim, it is great being here with you. It's a real honor, and let me tell you, I just read your new book, Rise the Fourth Reich. It is amazing, and so I'm honored to be with you as well.
Well, thank you very much. And I want you to know you're preaching to the choir today, because most of the people here on Dreamland are pretty much up to speed with things that are going on. So before we get into the New World Order and your new DVD, Endgame, I'd like to just fall back a little bit and talk about something that I'm sure you don't usually talk about, and that's yourself. Tell us a little bit about Alex Jones. Where did he come from, and what are his hopes and ambitions?
Well, I don't know how detailed you want me to get, Jim, so cut me off.
Just hit the surface.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and in the town I lived in outside Dallas, I witnessed the sheriff deal the drugs and then bust the kids for using them. And then later he went to prison for that, so that kind of woke me up to government-sponsored narcotics trafficking. And then for my last few years of